Guys, welcome to another installment on my home automation project. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the prerequisites that I thought were important for setting up my home automation projects. I have two. I have one at my home in Indiana. I have one at my home in Florida, where I happen to be right now for the winter. So there were certain things that I was really looking for in my home automation setup. Um, and I wanted to let you know what those four things were and tell you how I solved them. The very first thing that came to mind was I'm going to have this home automation project running on a computer. And if there was a power failure or some other reason why the computer had to restart, I wanted to make sure that the system would come back up. I had a computer or two that didn't automatically restart after a power failure, and I wanted to make sure that whatever I ran my home automation system on would reboot, power itself up if there was a power failure and after the power came on. As it turns out, that's really a pretty easy thing to solve on most computers because there's a BIOS setting that lets you set what the functionality is after a power failure. So that one I took care of pretty quickly. Secondly, I'm going to be running a virtual machine on that computer, and it needs to start up anytime the computer restarts. So I'm using both of my computers that are running my home automation are running Linux Mint, and then on each of those boxes I'm running VirtualBox, so it's a virtual machine software by Oracle. And as it turned out, it's pretty easy to set that up so that the virtual machine will start anytime there's a power failure. The machine reboots and starts back up again. Whether it's Linux or Windows, you can put things in a startup folder, and basically then the operating system will launch those upon startup. The third thing that I needed to make sure was that Home Assistant would actually start whenever the computer restarted. And this is also very simply done. You can create a shortcut to Home Assistant and put that in the startup folder, and then it will automatically launch the virtual machine and Home Assistant all in at once. When I was first exploring with this, I created a startup for the virtual machine, and then I created a separate startup shortcut for Home Assistant. And I couldn't figure out why I had two instances of the virtual box running. And it's because the Home Assistant shortcut basically launched a virtual box. So that is pretty easy to do.
All right, so I'm going to walk through updating some settings in my BIOS. Now I can't use my screen capture software when I'm doing this because we're going to be basically rebooting the system and interrupting the boot sequence in order to show what I have to change in the BIOS. So bear with me, the video is not as good as if we had screen capture available, but you'll get the general idea of it, I think. So so I am working right now on my HP Envy computer. Different computers, manufacturers use different keystrokes to access the BIOS. Sometimes if you restart your computer, so I'm just powering mine off now, but sometimes when you restart the computer, it will actually flash something on the screen that says how to do it. And in my case, I believe it's just the escape key to interrupt the BIOS sequence. So I've powered the computer off, and now I'm going to power it back on. So there, if you notice, mine says press the escape key for the startup menu. So I hit the escape key when mine was in the original boot sequence, and I've got some different options. I'm going to go to F10, which is my BIOS setting. You have various things you can generally do in your BIOS settings. We can look at the system information, set date and time, some various things. There is some boot sequencing here. We're not going to change mine right now, but this Ubuntu, that is my Linux partition, so that's what we are booting to first. If I want to do anything else, I have to interrupt it, basically. If I wanted to start from a flat flash drive or something. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Power on options. So we want to turn on this one that says after power loss. I want it to come on after power loss. So I can turn it off, or I can turn it on. And in this case, I want it turned on. So this solves the very first thing on my prerequisite list, which is making sure this computer will come back up again after we have a power loss. So depending on your BIOS setup, there's some way to get out of it. Save changes and exit would be the normal way. Since I don't want to change anything, I'm just going to say ignore changes and exit. And then I'm going to let it run through the entire startup sequence because I want you to see what happens when this computer restarts. So it wants to make sure, yes, boom. So now it just flipped over to the power on or reboot. And it's, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but I do want you to see what happens once the computer restarts. The next thing that'll happen is that Linux Mint will start, and it starts without any interaction from me. I don't have to log in here in order for the thing to complete its boot or startup. Maybe I'll be able to fast forward this when I do some editing. But you can see it's firing up Linux Mint. If you're at all interested in Linux as an operating system, to me, Mint is one of the really nice ones if you're coming from a Windows environment. It's very Windows-like. And yes, there's still a lot of stuff you can do at the command line if you choose, but there's enough stuff in here that is Windows-like that's great. All right, so now what happened is it finished its startup of Linux Mint, and it's immediately gone into the Home Assistant startup running on Oracle VirtualBox. So it really did both steps simultaneously. It started the VirtualBox and Home Assistant running it right as soon as the virtual machine was turned on. So the Home Assistant runs through this very long laundry list of different things. Takes a little while to complete, but not horribly long. But what's really interesting, I think, is that with a little bit of a shortcut, we can get the system to do, pretty much everything we need it to do, which is boot up, launch Linux, launch VirtualBox, and start Home Assistant all in a matter of the boot sequence and startup sequence. So it's still doing something. It can be slow. Something failed there. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look at it. But it's doing its thing, and it's trying to get everything up and running here. And then I'll show you the shortcut and how I added it to the startup feature in Linux. Okay, it's almost done now. It's waiting for the Home Assistant CLI to be ready, and then there's a supervisor, Home Assistant supervisor that starts, and then finally it'll be done. But it is still running, doing something in the background, even though it doesn't give us a lot of feedback. All right, when you get the Home Assistant logo, you're really close. And this is where it's waiting for the supervisor to start. Supervisor's slow today. And it's finally finished. So a couple of things of note, one is the URL for your local Home Assistant. It'll tell you what that is right there. You can also pick up your IP address for the Home Assistant instance. That's different than what it is for your computer, this computer that's running. There's two different IP addresses assigned, so it's important to know that. When it's time to add a shortcut, it's pretty easy. I just go to the menu and type start, and there's a link to startup applications. So now there's a lot of stuff in here, right? A lot of it was already put in the queue. But right here's my virtual box. But you can see I have that one turned off, and the reason I have it turned off is I have a shortcut here that launches VirtualBox and Home Assistant all at once. Let's see if I can look at it. So here is the command, right, which is to launch the VirtualBox and Home Assistant. So it does it all in one command. One other thing I'll point out is when you're setting up Home Assistant, there's a few things, and these are pretty well documented, but you need to bridge your network adapter which essentially creates a bridge between your host computer and the virtual machine. I ran into a little bit of an issue trying to use a USB stick, which had a Z-Wave controller in it, because I failed to turn on the USB deal where it was, allowing us to share that from the host computer to Home Assistant. And there's a few other things in here that you can set. I've got my display scaled up to 200%. For some reason on this particular computer and screen I'm using, if it's at 100%, it's really, really small. When I do it on my other computer, 100% looks perfectly fine full screen. So I'm not sure why that is, but I blew it up to 200% here so I can read it better. And there's a lot of other things that you can monkey around with and fix or tweak in here. But that's basically how you're setting up the virtual box to interact with Home Assistant.
Maybe the most challenging one as I thought about it was I have to be able to reach the Home Assistant server from anywhere, like anywhere that I can get internet, right? So Home Assistant likes to run on a local network. If you're on that local network, well, it's really easy to access it. Just go to a browser and say Home Assistant.local port 8123, and you are in. But what do you do when you're not on the local network? That was my challenge. So with two different locations throughout where I might be, I want to keep tabs on the one where I'm not. And so I really needed to come up with a way that I could reach the Home Assistant server from anywhere. And I found a software solution called Tailscale, which came to the rescue. It's a funny name, but it is a very, very valuable tool, I think, in trying to set up this home automation. So on the screen right now is my admin console for Tailscale. So you can create a, this is probably the best part for me anyway. There is a personal version that is free forever, they say. It's limited to 3 users, but really I only use one user right now. I might put my wife on it if she's computer savvy enough to want to get on. I can have 100 devices set up. And right now I got around 7 or 8, I think, but I can do up to 100. And it's totally free, they say forever. And if you really need some other stuff, why, it's a pretty inexpensive service. There is a Home Assistant Cloud that you can subscribe to. I don't know how much it is right off the top of my head, but I found this free Tailscale application to really, really fit my needs. And Tailscale can run on, I think, just about any platform. So I have it on an iPhone, I have it on an iPad, I have it on a Windows 11 desktop, I have it on a Linux machine, and I ran it on a Raspberry Pi. So there's very few things that it won't run on. And that makes connectivity really, really easy. So as I mentioned, this is my admin console, and I do have 7 machines on it. Looking at my little green dots, it looks like 6 of the 7 are connected. The only one that's not right now is my MacBook, because it's closed and unplugged and put to sleep, I guess. Um, what's really interesting and valuable in my mind is the fact that Tailscale, once you register a device, it will assign it a special URL that you can reach anywhere. You don't have to be connected directly to your Home Assistant local network. So, for example, I have my two Home Assistant instances are running. One's Indiana, one's down in Florida, and each has a very unique URL that I can jump over to from any device anywhere, and I can connect to my Home Assistant instance. So the one I have here in Florida, I could do the local access when I'm sitting in the house, but quite often I'm on my iPad out by the pool or somewhere in a restaurant or wherever, and I just want to take a look at something. I would have to then use my Tailscale ID. So I just use it all the time because it makes it really simple. Likewise, I just flipped over to my Indiana Home Assistant instance. Looks a little different. I'm playing around with this one and trying to figure out the best things that I can do with the various devices in both of my places. But what makes all this possible? Without it, I'd really not sure what I would do. Is tail scale. So tail scale will run right in Home Assistant. You can download it and run it in their system. It'll pop you out to the internet to log into Tailscale. It's really a simple process, very painless, and requires no hardware changes. You don't have to put things, exceptions in your router to allow incoming traffic from outside your local area network. So all those things combined, made Tailscale the ideal solution for me anyway, with my remote home automation setup. And I'm a big fan of Tailscale. So tailscale.com. I don't get paid anything from them, um, but I thought this was a really, really worthwhile program to share. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining us on that little episode about the prerequisites for our home automation project. I hope it helps a little bit, and we've got more episodes planned. So thanks for watching and join us again. Thanks.
Hey Google, turn off the family room lights.
Two lights off.